After my baby shower, my husband went quiet. Then he whispered, I need to tell you something before the baby comes. I thought he was scared to be a father. Instead, he said he loved my sister. So I called her. I didn't call her right away. I wish I had that kind of strength, but I didn't. For 2 days, I walked around my own apartment like it belonged to someone else. I stepped over baby shower gift bags, stared at the crib box against the wall, folded tiny blankets, unfolded them, and folded them again because my hands needed something to do. My husband, Nathan, kept trying to talk to me. Not like someone trying to fix the damage. More like someone trying to control where the damage landed. He would stand in the doorway of the nursery and say, Emma, please. Can we talk for 5 minutes? And I would look at him, feel the baby move inside me, and think, this is the man who was planning a family with me while his heart was apparently somewhere else. I was 31 weeks pregnant when he told me he thought he was in love with my older sister, Audrey. That sentence still doesn't sound real. It sounds like something people invent online when they want strangers to fight in the comments. I would love to say there were obvious signs. That I caught him staring at her too long, or found messages, or noticed some private joke between them. But I didn't. That is part of what made it so awful. Audrey had always been around because Audrey had always been my person. She was the one I called when I was scared, angry, or needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. She showed up with soup when my morning sickness got so bad I cried on the bathroom floor. She helped me paint the nursery when Nathan had to work late. She planned my baby shower small and quiet because she knew I hated being the center of attention. I trusted her with everything. Nathan knew that. He knew she wasn't just my sister in some casual, holiday dinner kind of way. Audrey practically raised me after our dad left and our mom emotionally checked out. She made sure I ate dinner. She sat on the edge of my bed when I was 14 and convinced I would never feel normal. She took every broken part of our childhood and tried to hold it together with her bare hands. So when Nathan told me he loved her, it did not just feel like he wanted another woman. It felt like he reached into the safest place in my life and ruined it. The baby shower had been beautiful, which somehow made the memory worse. Audrey put up soft yellow decorations because I didn't want everything pink. She made a table of snacks I could actually eat without feeling sick. She kept checking on me, touching my shoulder, asking if I needed water. Nathan was there the whole time. He smiled in the pictures. He helped carry gifts to the car. He thanked people for coming. He put his hand on my back when I stood up too fast and told me to slow down. Everyone said we looked happy. Everyone said the baby was lucky. Everyone said I had the best sister in the world. On the drive home, Nathan barely spoke. At first, I thought he was tired. I was swollen, emotional, and ready to get out of the dress I had forced myself into. I remember asking him if he liked the little stuffed rabbit Audrey bought for the nursery. He said, yeah, it was nice. That was it. When we got home, he brought the gifts inside while I changed into one of his old shirts. I was taking off my earrings when I heard the cabinet open in the kitchen. Then the sound of glass. Then the bottle. Nathan didn't drink much anymore. So when I walked out and saw him pouring whiskey into a mug because most of our glasses were in the dishwasher, I just stared. I said, maybe don't get drunk tonight. We still have gifts to sort. He didn't smile. He took one sip, set the mug down, and said, I need to tell you something before the baby comes. My first thought was money. Maybe because money is the kind of problem that feels horrible but fixable. I thought maybe he had maxed out a card. Maybe he hated the name we picked. Maybe he was scared of being a father and didn't know how to say it. So I sat carefully on the couch and said, okay, tell me. He didn't sit beside me. He sat on the edge of the coffee table, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, and stared at the floor. He looked like someone waiting for a sentence to be handed down. I said, Nathan, you're scaring me. He rubbed both hands over his face and said, I think I'm in love with Audrey. For a second, the room went empty. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Somewhere near my ribs, my daughter kicked hard enough to make me flinch. And then I laughed. I hate that I laughed, but I did. It was this ugly, confused sound that didn't belong to me. I said, that is not something you say to your pregnant wife. He started crying. Real crying. His shoulders shook. His face turned red. He kept wiping his nose with the back of his hand like a little boy. He said, I know. I know it's horrible. I've tried to stop it. I remember staring at him like if I looked hard enough, the man I knew would come back. He said nothing physical had happened. He said Audrey didn't know. He said he had never told her. He said he hated himself. He said he was only telling me because he didn't want to bring our daughter into a marriage built on a lie. That line made me sick. A marriage built on a lie. Like he had been noble enough to finally hand me the truth after decorating the lie with a nursery, ultrasound appointments, and baby names. I asked him, how long? He didn't answer right away. That pause told me it was not new. Finally, he said, I don't know. Maybe a year. A year. While we were trying for this baby, he was feeling things for my sister. While I cried over negative tests, he held me with that inside him. When we finally got the positive test and he lifted me off the bathroom floor and laughed into my neck, he already had another woman sitting somewhere in his heart. My sister. I asked him why. I don't know why. Maybe when someone slices your life open, you want to inspect the blade. He said, she's just easy to talk to. I said nothing. He swallowed and kept going. She understands things. She's strong. She's kind. She knows how to make people feel safe. That was the moment something in me changed. Not because he called her kind. Audrey is kind. Not because he called her strong. She is. But every single thing he admired about her came from what our childhood forced her to become. She made people feel safe because no one made us feel safe. She learned to read moods because our house was unpredictable. She became the person who took care of everyone because there was nobody else. He was romanticizing her survival. I said, so the things you love about her are the things she had to become because our parents failed us? He looked stunned, like that had never occurred to him. I asked, did you marry me because I reminded you of her? He said, no, so fast it sounded rehearsed. I asked again. He said, Emma, no. I love you. That made me angrier than if he had said nothing. I said, you love me, but you're in love with my sister? He started crying harder, and I had this strange calm moment where I realized I could not comfort him. Normally, seeing Nathan cry would have pulled me toward him. I would have rubbed his back and told him we'd figure it out. But that night, all I could think was, you don't get to make me hold you while you confess this. I stood up and walked to the nursery. He followed me halfway down the hall and said, please don't shut me out. I turned around and said, you brought her into my marriage. You don't get to decide where I put my pain. Then I closed the nursery door. I didn't sleep. I sat in the rocking chair Audrey had found secondhand and cleaned herself. The cushions still smelled faintly like the lemon spray she used on everything. I watched the morning light slowly change the color of the walls and kept one hand on my stomach. Around 4 a.m, I Googled whether extreme stress could hurt a baby. Then I cried because even my panic had become something I had to manage carefully. Nathan knocked once around sunrise. He said through the door, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. Later that morning, he tried again. He had made toast, like toast could sit beside the confession and balance the table. He said, I know you hate me right now. I told him I don't know what I feel. He looked relieved, which made me realize he heard that as hope. Then he said the sentence that turned my sadness into something colder. Please don't tell Audrey. I stared at him. He said it would destroy her. It would make everything weird. It would humiliate me. It would blow up the family for no reason. For no reason. I said, you think this is no reason? He said, that's not what I meant. But it was exactly what he meant. He had dropped this into my lap and expected me to carry it quietly because silence protected him. He wanted honesty when it relieved his guilt, but secrecy when the truth threatened his image. I asked, so I'm supposed to sit across from my sister and pretend I don't know my husband thinks he loves her? He said, I'm trying to do the right thing. I said, for who? He didn't answer. For 2 days, I didn't tell Audrey. Not because I agreed with him, but because saying it out loud felt impossible. I ignored her texts. She sent pictures from the baby shower and asked if I wanted leftover cake. Then she asked if I was okay. Then she called. By the second evening, she showed up. I was sitting on the couch in one of Nathan's hoodies, even though wearing it made me feel stupid. He was in the bedroom. When Audrey knocked, I almost didn't open the door. But she called my name through it, and her voice cracked a little. So I opened it. The second she saw my face, her whole expression changed. She stepped inside, shut the door behind her, and said, what did he do? That was Audrey. She didn't ask if I was being hormonal. She looked at me once and knew there was a wound in the room. I tried to say it calmly. I said, Nathan told me he thinks he's in love with you. Her face went blank. Then she whispered, what? I said it again. She sat down slowly, like her legs had stopped working. She looked toward the hallway, then back at me, and her hands started shaking. She said, Emma, no. I said, he says nothing happened. He says you don't know. She covered her mouth. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she asked the question I knew she would ask, because Audrey would rather blame herself than let me feel alone. Did I do something? I said no. She said, did I make him think? I cut her off. No. Don't do that. Her eyes filled, and for the first time since Nathan confessed, I felt sure about something. Audrey had not encouraged this. Audrey had not played some secret game. She was affectionate, yes. She hugged people. She fussed over people. She asked if everyone had eaten. That was not flirting. That was how she learned to love when she was barely old enough to understand what love was supposed to be. She said, I would never do that to you. I know. She started crying then. Not loudly. Just tears sliding down her face while she stared at the floor. She said, I'm so sorry. I said, you didn't do anything. She said, I'm sorry my presence became another thing that hurt you. That broke me. I don't even remember moving. 1 second we were sitting apart, and the next she was holding me while I sobbed into her shoulder. My stomach was between us, awkward and heavy, and she kept saying, I've got you. Nathan came out of the bedroom. Audrey stiffened. He looked at her, then at me, and I saw the moment he realized I had told her. His face changed from shame to anger so quickly it scared me. He said, you told her. Audrey stood before I could answer. She said, do not make this her fault. He said, I wasn't. She said, you were about to. His jaw tightened. He looked at me and said, I trusted you with something humiliating. I laughed once. It came out bitter. You trusted me? You told your pregnant wife you loved her sister, then asked her to keep it secret so you could feel less embarrassed. He said, that's not fair. Audrey said, neither is any of this. Nathan looked at her like he wanted her to comfort him. That was the worst part. Even after blowing up my life, some part of him expected Audrey to soften it. She didn't. She said, you don't contact me. You don't explain. You don't apologize privately. Anything you need to say goes through Emma, and only if she wants to hear it. He looked devastated. And I hated that his devastation still hurt me. Because I loved him. That was the ugly truth sitting under everything. I loved the man who talked to my belly every night. I loved the man who rubbed my feet when they swelled. I loved the man who cried when we heard our daughter's heartbeat for the first time. But I was starting to realize love does not protect you from disgust. Audrey wanted me to come home with her that night. I said no. Not yet. I wasn't ready to pack a bag while Nathan watched. I wasn't ready to turn this into a separation. I wanted to believe there was still some version of my marriage that could survive, even if I couldn't imagine what that looked like. So Audrey left after making me promise I would call if I needed her. Nathan and I spent that night on opposite sides of the apartment. The next morning, he asked if we could talk. I said, about what? He said, counseling. Or a marriage consultation. Anything. I'll do anything. I looked at him and said, anything. He said yes. And, because I was scared, because I was pregnant, because I did not want my daughter's first story to be that her father confessed he loved her aunt before she was even born, I agreed. I told myself agreeing did not mean forgiving. But deep down, I was still hoping he would prove that I mattered more. The marriage consultation office was too quiet. The carpet was soft, the lights were warm, and there was a little table with tissues placed between the chairs like the room already knew people came there to fall apart. Nathan sat beside me, but not close enough for our arms to touch. Catherine, the consultant, asked why we were there. Nathan looked at me like he wanted me to say it first. I refused. I had carried enough of his confession already. So he said it. I developed feelings for her sister. Developed feelings. Like they were a rash. Like they appeared one morning and he had no part in feeding them. Catherine asked, did you act on those feelings? Nathan said no. Then he looked at me quickly, like he wanted credit. I stared at my hands. Catherine asked what he wanted from the consultation. He said, I want to work through it and stay married. I wanted to believe him. I hated how badly I wanted that. Even sitting there with my stomach tight and my throat burning, some part of me was waiting for him to say the right thing. I wanted him to say Audrey was a mistake in his head. I wanted him to say he would do whatever it took. I wanted him to choose me so clearly that my body could finally unclench. Catherine asked, are you willing to take space from her sister while you repair trust with your wife? Nathan didn't answer. It was not a long silence. Maybe 2 seconds. Maybe 3. But sometimes a whole marriage can die in 3 seconds. He looked down. He rubbed his thumb over his wedding ring. Then he said, that's complicated. I felt the room tilt. Catherine asked, what part feels complicated? He said, she's family. It would be weird if she suddenly disappeared. It might hurt Emma more. I turned my head and looked at him. He wouldn't look back. I said, "Don't use me as your excuse." He said, "I'm not." "You are. You're saying you need access to my sister because losing access would hurt me." He said, "That's not what I mean." I asked, "Then what do you mean?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Catherine asked him gently, "Are you afraid of losing contact with Audrey?" He didn't say yes. He didn't have to. My daughter moved, and I put one hand over my stomach because it felt like the only part of me I could still protect. I said, "I think I have my answer." Nathan turned to me. "Emma, please." "I'm here. I'm trying." I said, "You hesitated." He said, "Because it's not simple." I said, "It should be." That was the first time I truly understood the difference between someone being sorry and someone being willing to change. Nathan was sorry. I believe that. He hated the pain he caused. He hated the version of himself that had to say the words. He hated that Audrey looked at him differently now. But he was not ready to cut off the thing he wanted. After the session, we sat in the parking lot without starting the car. Rain hit the windshield in thin lines. I watched people walk in and out of the building like their lives were still normal. Nathan said, "You're acting like I cheated." I said, "You keep saying that like it makes this clean. It matters. It matters to you because it's the only defense you have." He gripped the steering wheel. I said, "You were emotionally somewhere else during the most vulnerable year of my life. You let me build a nursery with you while you were imagining another woman. My sister. That counts as something, even if you never touched her." He said, "I told you because I wanted to save us." I turned toward him. "No. You told me because the guilt got too heavy. Saving us would have meant walking away from that feeling before it became a confession." His face crumpled, and for 1 second I almost reached for him. Then I remembered him hesitating. I asked him to drive me to Audrey's. He said, "You're going to stay with her?" I said, "For now." He looked like I had slapped him. "Do you understand how humiliating that is for me?" Something in me went very still. I said, "You are worried that me staying with my sister humiliates you?" He didn't answer. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because the whole thing was so backwards I couldn't process it any other way. He had confessed he loved her. He had asked me not to tell her. He had hesitated when asked to take distance from her. And now I was supposed to consider how my survival looked from his side. When we got to Audrey's, she was already waiting outside with an umbrella. I had texted her from the parking lot. Just 3 words. "Can I come?" She replied almost instantly. "Always. Doors open." Nathan parked but didn't get out. I took my overnight bag from the back seat. Audrey walked over and opened my door before I could struggle with it. Nathan said, "Can we not make this permanent?" Audrey stayed quiet. She just helped me stand. I told him, "I'm not making anything permanent tonight. I'm trying to breathe." He nodded, but his face hardened, like even my breathing had become an accusation. That first night in Audrey's guest room was awful and peaceful at the same time. Awful because I was 31 weeks pregnant, sleeping in a bed that was not mine, with my marriage sitting in pieces somewhere across town. Peaceful because nobody was standing in the doorway asking me to make them feel less guilty. Audrey put fresh sheets on the bed. She set water on the nightstand. She brought me one of her oversized sweaters because I had packed badly. Then she stood there awkwardly and said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "Me neither." She sat at the foot of the bed. "I blocked him," she said. I looked at her. "You did?" She nodded. "He sent me a message while you were at the consultation." I didn't answer. Then he sent another one. My stomach dropped. "What did it say?" Audrey hesitated. I said, "Please don't protect me from it." She handed me her phone. The message was long. It started with an apology, but the apology kept bending back toward him. He said he was disgusted with himself. He said he never meant for his feelings to hurt anyone. He said Audrey had always represented comfort to him, and he confused that comfort for something else. He said he hoped one day she could forgive him. I stopped reading at that line. One day she could forgive him. Not me. Her. I handed the phone back. Audrey said, "I blocked him after that." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. She sat beside me and said, "I am not choosing him." I need you to hear that. I know. No, I mean it. There is no secret part of me that is flattered. There is no part of me wondering what if. I am angry. I am disgusted. And I am scared because I know this took something from you that I can't give back. That was when I cried. Not loudly. I was too tired for that. Just this quiet, broken leaking that made my chest hurt. Audrey cried too, and for a while we sat there like we were teenagers again, hiding from a house that had become too loud. The next few days were a blur of texts, calls, and people having opinions about a pain they did not have to live inside. Nathan texted constantly. He was sorry. He wanted me home. He loved me. He made a mistake. He begged me not to shut him out. Then came the one that made my hands shake. You're using the baby to punish me. I stared at that message for a long time. I was sitting on Audrey's couch with a baby blanket across my lap. She was in the kitchen making tea, and I could hear the kettle starting to boil. The whole room smelled like lavender laundry detergent because she had washed all the baby clothes I brought with me. I typed 3 replies and deleted them. Finally, I wrote, I am protecting my peace. That includes the baby. He replied almost immediately. She's my daughter too. I wrote, then act like her father and stop making your guilt my responsibility. He didn't answer after that. Nathan's mother, Elizabeth, called me the next morning. I almost ignored it, but some stupid part of me still wanted the adults to act like adults. She started with, honey, I know emotions are high. That was when I knew the call would be useless. She said men panic before babies come. She said Nathan had been under pressure. She said sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're scared of responsibility. I asked, did he tell you what he said? She paused. Then she said, he told me he developed a confusing attachment. A confusing attachment. I almost smiled because Nathan had clearly workshopped the phrase. I said, he told me he thinks he's in love with Audrey. Elizabeth sighed like I was being difficult. But nothing happened, right? I said, something did happen. He made my sister unsafe inside my marriage. She told me I was making it bigger than it had to be. She said I should be grateful he confessed before making a worse mistake. She said marriage takes grace. Then she said the sentence that ended the call. You don't want to bring a child into a broken home over hurt feelings. I said, my home broke when he said it. Then I hung up. Aunt Julia was not much better. She came from that generation where a woman leaving is always more suspicious than a man causing the damage. She told me babies need fathers. She said I should wait until the baby came, calm down, and let Nathan prove himself. My friend Sophia had a softer version of the same opinion. She said, I'm not defending him. I just don't want you making a permanent decision while you're this close to delivery. I understood that more. Sophia wasn't minimizing it. She was scared for me. But every person telling me to wait made me feel like my pain was on a schedule. Like I had to postpone my own heartbreak because it was inconvenient for everyone else. So I did what I could without blowing everything up. I opened a separate bank account. I moved my documents into a folder Audrey kept in her closet. I changed my hospital paperwork so Audrey was listed as my support person. I told the hospital Nathan could be informed when I went into labor, but he was not automatically allowed in the room. That was the first decision that made me feel like I still had a body. Like I still had a say. When Nathan found out, he came to Audrey's place. He didn't barge in. I'll give him that. He stood outside and called me from the front step. Audrey looked through the peephole and said, you don't have to talk to him. But I wanted to. Maybe because I needed to see if he would finally understand. I stepped outside, wrapped in Audrey's sweater, with my phone in my hand in case I needed to record. That sounds dramatic, but pregnancy has a way of making you practical. Nathan looked terrible. His eyes were red, his clothes were wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. A month ago, that would have made me rush into his arms. Now it just made me tired. He said, you changed the hospital paperwork. I said, yes. His voice cracked. Emma, that's my child. I know. You can't keep me from her. I'm not trying to. I'm deciding who gets access to me while I give birth. He looked away. I said, you keep making this about punishment. It's not. Labor is not a courtroom. It's not where you prove you're sorry. It's where I need to feel safe. He said, and I don't make you feel safe anymore? The question hung there. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, of course you do, because saying the truth felt like closing a door. But I said no. He cried then. Quietly. His face twisted, and he covered his mouth like he was trying to keep the sound in. I love you, he said. I said, I believe you. He looked up fast, hopeful. I kept going. But I don't think loving me stopped you from wanting her. And I don't know how to live with that yet. He said, tell me what to do. I said, you already know what I needed you to do. He whispered, Audrey. I nodded. He said, I blocked her too. I asked, before or after she blocked you? His face told me the answer. He said, that's not fair. I said, Nathan, you confessed feelings for my sister, then messaged her an apology that cared more about her forgiveness than mine. He closed his eyes. I said, you say you want to save our marriage, but every time the choice is between my safety and your access to her, you hesitate. He didn't argue. That was new. For a moment, he looked like a man finally seeing the shape of what he had broken. He said, do you want a divorce? I didn't answer right away. The honest answer was that I didn't know. I still don't. People like clean endings. They want the woman to slam the door, file the papers, glow up, and never look back. I wish feelings worked that neatly. I loved him. Part of me still does. I miss the version of him I had before the baby shower. I miss grocery shopping with him at 9 at night because I suddenly wanted cereal. I miss him laughing when the baby kicked his cheek. I miss sleeping beside him without wondering who he wished was there instead. But missing someone is not the same as trusting them. I told him, I want space until after the baby is born. Real space. No guilt texts. No showing up here. No using your mother to pressure me. No contacting Audrey. If you want updates about the baby, I will send them. If there is an emergency, I will tell you. He nodded. Then he said, and after. I said, after. We see you when you're not getting what you want. That hurt him. I saw it land. But it was the truth. The next weeks were quieter. Not easy, but quieter. Nathan stopped texting constantly. Elizabeth tried once more through a long message about forgiveness, but I did not respond. Aunt Julia sent me a quote about marriage being a garden, and Audrey deleted it off my phone before I could throw the phone across the room. Audrey and I built the crib. Technically, she built it while I sat on the floor eating crackers and reading the instructions wrong. We laughed so hard at one point that I had to pee, which made us laugh harder. For 10 minutes, my life felt almost normal. Then I looked at the empty crib and cried. Audrey sat beside me and asked, do you want him there when she's born? I wiped my face and said, I don't know. She nodded. No pressure. No speech. Just sat with me. That is what love felt like in that moment. Not dramatic. Not possessive. Not confused. Just someone beside me without asking me to make their pain easier. 2 weeks later, I packed my hospital bag. I put in the baby clothes, a phone charger, lip balm, socks, snacks Audrey insisted on buying, and a folder with my medical paperwork. At the bottom, I put the tiny daddy's girl onesie Nathan had picked out months earlier. I don't know why I packed it. Maybe because I'm not trying to erase him. That is what people don't understand. I am not trying to punish Nathan by making him disappear. I want him to be a good father. I want my daughter to be loved by everyone who can love her safely. I just don't want her first lesson in love to be watching her mother swallow betrayal to keep a family picture intact. Nathan and I had one more calm conversation before the due date got close. We met at a coffee shop because I didn't want to be alone with him, and Audrey waited in the car without making it obvious. He looked better. Tired, but less frantic. He told me he had started individual counseling. He said he was trying to understand why he confused comfort with love. He said he knew that did not fix anything. He said he was sorry for asking me to keep the secret. He said that was selfish. It was the first apology that didn't sound like he was begging me to rescue him from consequences. I thanked him for saying it. He asked if he could be at the hospital. I told him I hadn't decided. He swallowed and nodded. Okay. No argument. No guilt. No, but I'm the father. Just okay. That made me cry in the car afterward because it was the first time he gave me space without trying to take something back. I wish that made everything clear. It didn't. That is where things are now. I am still at Audrey's. My hospital bag is by the door. Nathan gets updates after appointments, and he has respected the boundaries so far. Audrey has kept him blocked. Elizabeth is angry. Aunt Julia thinks I am stubborn. Sophia thinks I am doing the best I can. And me? I am tired. I am heartbroken. I am calmer than I was, but calm is not the same as healed. Some mornings, I wake up and think maybe my marriage is not dead. Maybe Nathan broke something, and maybe broken things can be repaired if the person holding the glue stops cutting your hands with the pieces. Other mornings, I remember that pause in the consultation office. I remember Catherine asking if he could take space from my sister. I remember him hesitating. That hesitation has become the sound my marriage makes when I close my eyes. I don't know what I will decide after my daughter is born. Maybe I will try counseling again. Maybe I will file for separation. Maybe Nathan will become the kind of father who proves he can put someone else's safety above his own shame. Maybe he won't. But I do know this. I am not carrying his secret anymore. I am not letting his confession turn my sister into my enemy. I am not letting anyone tell me that betrayal only counts if there was a bet involved. My daughter is coming into a complicated world, but I want her first home to be honest, even if it is not perfect. I want her to know that love can be patient without being blind. I want her to know that forgiveness, if it ever comes, is not something people get to demand because they finally told the truth. Nathan says he confessed because he did not want our marriage built on a lie. Maybe he was right about that part. Because once the lie was gone, I finally saw the foundation. And now I have to decide if it is cracked or completely gone. So I guess my question is this. If your husband confessed he was in love with your sister while you were carrying his child, but swore nothing physical happened, would you try to rebuild the marriage? Or would that hesitation in the consultation office be enough to walk away?